If you don't understand what you're worth, do you think your clients understand what you're worth? They're probably going to leave.
Defining what you're worth is a hard thing. That comes with some emotional and psychological baggage for people.
What'd you charge your first client?
I think it was about 12 grand for a 30-second paid digital ad.
Hey, welcome everybody. I'm excited to have you on another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass, a podcast for the agency owner that wants to grow and scale faster. On today's episode, I have a great agency owner that is extremely profitable and doesn't work crazy hours. And so we're going to really kind of dive into how they did this, because the whole goal is not just to make crazy amount of top line revenue. It's about being profitable and having the freedom to do what you love. So welcome to the show, Shannon.
Hi, thanks for having
So
me.
tell us who you are, what you do.
My name's Shannon Fitzgerald. I am the co-founder and chief creative officer for the Hooligans agency. And we are a teeny tiny creative agency that specializes in video. I like to say we make culturally dope shit that makes the world a more fair and equitable place. But basically, our clients are small to mid-sized agencies, democratic political campaigns, nonprofits, advocacy groups, social impact. And so forth.
Awesome. Can you share kind of the journey of establishing, like why did you establish the marketing agency, and was there kind of any key milestones that really kind of stood out to you?
It was in need. There was a need in the spaces we work in, primarily the political, nonprofit, and advocacy, in terms of the kind of creative they're doing. It tends to be very traditional, not spaces where they like to iterate, let alone innovate. And it just seemed like in early 2020, when there was sort of so much at stake, so many things on the line, democracy, et cetera, that could I bring all the storytelling skills that I had developed in the TV world for 2 decades into this world? And so my partner and I formed the Hooligans in May of 2020 in the middle of COVID, because why wouldn't you? To sort of start pushing that boulder up the hill, see if we could get these more traditionally minded clients to take some creative risks. Because that's how you move the needle. That's how you get people to do stuff. That's how you get better ROI. So that's a daily battle, but one that's worth having.
What'd you charge your first client?
First client, I think was, oh boy, I'm trying to remember. I think it was about 12 grand for a 30-second paid digital ad. Our turnarounds are very fast. We kind of turn things around from ideation through inception in 3 or 4 or 5 days. Like, it's pretty bananas. So 12,000 is for a week's work kind of thing.
Well, you crush a lot of people that I always, every once in a while I'll ask that question, and most people are like $500,000. But that's probably why you guys have been profitable so quick. So how did you come up with that pricing? What gave you the confidence to charge that amount? Because, I was just chatting with a new mastermind member not too long ago, actually this week, and she had maybe 10 clients that is actually costing her money. And I was like, why? Why are you why are you paying them to do work for them? And we coached her through to raising her prices, but I think you're starting off in the right foot. So how did you get there?
I think just confidence in our ability, and knowing that there's a need, and knowing that our goal is to find right fit clients, high quality clients that value what we do, right? And that are willing to pay a little more for those services. And this is part of the battle. Not everybody does understand or value good creative, but those that do understand that you get what you pay for. And as we were able to start proving out that the way that we do things really does work, you can bring that case to people who are really risk adverse and so on and so forth. But I think it's just confidence. And my partner's been a political consultant for many, many years and sort of understands the landscape. He was at the forefront of the the digital revolution pre-Obama, and so understands how to innovate in a very traditional space. And he's just like, there's a need. Let's charge what we think we're worth, and we'll see how it goes.
I like that you know what you're worth. I think too many
Yeah.
people. I was even chatting with someone yesterday, and I was like, "Well, how'd you come up with this pricing?" And they were like, "I don't know. It just kind of felt good." And I was like, "Well,
Mm,
do, if you don't understand what you're worth, do you think your clients understand what you're worth?" Right? And then
yeah.
they're probably going to leave. Fortunately for this agency I was chatting with yesterday, their churn rate was really pretty low for losing
Mm,
clients. I was like, okay, well, good. So they do see value. So you can raise your prices, but we need to figure out what you're worth. I always tell everybody,
yeah.
think about if you were going, and I think you've done this, and I'd like to hear kind of your criteria. What would be
Yeah.
your particular service and who would you work for if you were only going to be paid on performance? And obviously, I think you're like exactly what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and sort of defining what you're worth is a hard thing. That comes with some emotional and psychological baggage for people, right? It's not just about their worth and the profession that they're in, but also it can be attached to some sort of deeper rooted stuff, right? So I think separating those things out and going, okay, and women, I think culturally, we're also conditioned not to, kind of take a back seat, not to ask for what we're worth. I'm sure there are people listening to me right now going, well, who does she think she is? But if, a guy said it, it may have a different effect. But I do think, yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure if I'm answering it well, but
Walk us through how did you figure out what you're worth? Like just kind of psychologically, how did you figure that out?
Um, bringing a lot of experience to the table as a storyteller and as a content maker. 2 decades worth of experience doing all kinds of different things, and really honing my craft. And there was an immediate connection I made once I got into politics in terms of how to synthesize their strategic objectives and the messaging that they wanted, the voters to know, and how that could be packaged in more interesting, entertaining, and high concept ways than they had been deploying before. It was just something that clicked, and it was an instinct. And I know to trust my instincts, because I've been doing this for so long. And often the best things come from going, there's something here. And I don't know quite what it is yet, but I trust my gut. So if I can convince the client to take this leap with me, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. I,
And it happens every time.
well, I wish I had that gut in my very beginning because it took me having a pain in the ass prospect coming to me and I didn't want to say no. And I literally was like
Right.
80,000 thinking he would just go away. And he said yes. And I'm like, oh, like that was like 10 times more than I've ever said to anybody. And he said yes. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
shit, there's a big opportunity cost between these. So now I was like, oh, now I know I'm worth more because someone said yes. And, it
Mhm.
just takes, I think it is experience, like you were saying, like you've been around, you've, worked, a pretty high level position at MTV, which side note, in the 90s,
Yeah.
in the early 90s, me and my cousin were on the beach house in New York on MTV.
Oh my god. Really? I think we're gonna need some footage of that,
Yeah. Well,
Grayson.
you might have to just pull some of your friends to find that. So, but that was
That's
cool looking back
amazing.
then. I was like, oh man, we hung out with Matt Lauder and Bill Bellamy and all these guys. I was like, that's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah. Old school.
Very old school. You can see the gray.
Yeah. Yes, I know. I don't know what's under these blonde
There
highlights, and
you
I
go.
don't wanna know.
How do you communicate? So now I think the first step is really kind of figuring out what you're worth. And a lot of times I tell people just unless you're doing work for me, charge the Jason tax. And that's kind of funny. A lot of our mastermind members, we'll do work. We'll actually hire because they're so good. And I'm like, are you going to give me your old rates or your new rates that we've kind of coached you into?
Right.
But how are you communicating the value to your prospects and knowing what is the best criteria? Like, what are the things in your gut that go, I need to punt. I need to run away from this person.
I think, well, the first thing is being values aligned. That's the first and foremost thing. Is the message that they want to put out to the world something that I want to spend my time on? So that weeds people out pretty quickly. Um, the other thing is getting a sense of whether they really do value good creative. And I know that's a subjective thing, but are willing to try new things that are, will trust our guidance and in a collaborative way, kind of go, okay, how do we take something that a lot of people are going to ignore if we do it in the way that it's been done. So like a PSA or an ad telling people to vote because it's, you can vote by mail now or whatever the case may be. How do we make kind of boring, dry and rote information interesting? And so what I typically do is I will turn around a document with 4, 5, 6, maybe very top line ideas, ways to skin this cat. And they vary from fairly, little left to center. And I sort of move those, out of the box goalposts further and further out. So they have a range of ideas to choose from. They pick one, and that gives me a sense of where they are in terms of the risks that they're willing to take creatively. So that's a good starting point. And then we can kind of dig into that idea that they've greenlit, get on the same page, make sure that they feel heard, that their concerns are validated, and that I walk them through those, and that at every step of the process, if there's something that I can address that they've asked for, I communicate clearly why. I didn't just
Yeah.
ignore that. You're getting this cut back, but here's why we didn't address it. I hear your concern underneath that. So here's what we did to address it that I think is probably a more effective creative solution. So it's being really almost over communicative, especially because a lot of people, in terms of our clients, aren't experienced with
Hmm.
creative work in that process. So we really try and be as transparent and communicative and collaborative as possible. And that helps.
So, are you doing this before they pay you? Like coming up with ideas, or do you have are you splitting
No,
up your offering a little bit?
they know our general approach, but no, we don't do RFPs. We don't do, I think they're a bloody waste of time.
Request for punishment.
Um,
That's what they
and
stand for.
either, oh God, they're the worst, and rarely anything comes from them. But no, it's really about part of how we find those right fit, high quality clients is having that call, the discovery call. We're like, here's our approach. Tell us what your needs are, and here's how we would tackle it, just at a very kind of 30,000 foot view. And they either kind of trust that approach or they don't, and that kind of again weeds people
And
out
they
pretty
close pretty
quickly.
quick, I
So if you
presume?
want to do, yeah, I mean, if you want to do the same old, there are a million people that can do. I mean, have your comms person write a script and have an editor out of college edit it with some stock footage, right? I mean, in motion graphics, like that's not why you come to us. You come to us for something
Yeah.
different, something that elevates what's been done.
So with your quick turnaround time, a lot of people maybe, they're listening and going, all right, cool. You're extremely profitable. You have high turnaround times, but how are you personally having the freedom to take and not work all these crazy hours?
Yeah, well, not always, but now I will say once we get closer to election day, things get a little nutty, but it's short. I think it's this is scrappy and resourceful approach that we take, which it really makes you disciplined. It makes you decisive. It enables you to really trust your gut because you kind of just have to make a decision and go with it. And you find more often than not that your first instinct about something is the right one. It's when we overthink and we have all this time, this luxury of time, that we start talking ourselves out of some pretty great ideas. We have to really lean on each other as a team and collaborate. And it's about maximizing what you've got, right? So you're forced to eliminate any unnecessary steps. You prioritize differently, you streamline your workflows, and you have to be really buttoned up. I love the expression, on the other side of preparation is freedom, and I really do believe that the more buttoned up we are. We also have to potty train our clients. Here's the process. Here's the schedule. You're going to get a cut on this day. We need notes back. One set of marching orders, not like 14,000 stakeholders weighing in, and those are trickling in over the day. And we need it by this time if we're going to deliver on schedule and on budget. And here are the penalties, whether it's monetarily or we're not going to meet your deadline if you don't, work with us on the process that we've laid
what
out
are
to
your
get you there.
penalties?
We will charge an hourly fee for editing. So, like, it goes above and beyond the initial quote. So, if we're having to work a weekend, if we're having to, let's say we had a script locked and we went into the edit and it's very motion graphics heavy or animation heavy, and then they decide to change the script, which means we have to undo a lot of that work and redo it. There's a price for that. So it's more time, and tends to whip them into shape pretty quickly. 3 rounds of revisions. And if we go into a fourth or a fifth, then that starts to incur the hourly fee as
Yeah.
well.
Well, I'm glad that you hold them accountable. There's a lot of agencies that they talk about holding them accountable, and then it gets to the project manager, the account manager, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we could do this," and then it's just they keep building
Yeah.
upon the scope and not saying no. Like one of my favorite things that I would teach my account managers, and this is what I tell agency owners now to avoid scope creep, is when the client comes to you for something small, yes, do it for
Yeah.
them, but physically make them sign a change order and zero it out. Do a $0 change order.
Yeah.
And so you're training them that, hey, this was out of scope. I'm going to give it to you this time. But then when they come to you for the big one, then that's when you really sock it to them and you really kind of you make your money back. It's kind of like that Lincoln Lawyer movie at the very end. He's like, yeah, this one's on the house. And the driver's like, why are you going to do it on the house? He's like, we'll get them repeat customer.
Yeah, well, no, and it sets a bad precedent. But yeah, occasionally something will come up that's just out of everybody's control, and we're reasonable. But I think it is really laying out the process at the outset too, and making sure people understand. And we also lay out, at the rough cut stage, you're going to get 3 cuts: a rough cut, a fine cut, and a lot cut. For instance, at the rough cut stage, that's where we're going to do the heaviest lifting. So give most of the notes then. Fine cut, we're getting into kind of tweaky stuff. And then when we send that revised cut, we're kind of locked. If there's some last minute adjustment, that's probably fine. But then they understand at every stage what the expectation on their end is, and letting them know that it's very collaborative. We have to work together as a team to make this happen, especially given the turnaround times that we're
I
working with.
presume your agency is more project based than retainer based. Is that a good assumption?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
is that by design?
It's kind of the way that these industries work. We're starting to move out of that as we do more brand side and corporate, kind of the CSR, social impact work. But the project by project basis works well for us because we have such a teeny tiny core team, and we're able to kind of scale up, bring in an editor or editor or two, or whatever extra support we need per project, and then they're gone again. And then we scale up, we scale down, we scale up, we scale down. So it allows us to be very nimble and flexible, and we don't have to have a bunch of full-time employees, which is fantastic.
Talk to me about. I feel like you've really kind of designed this agency around your lifestyle. Is that a good assumption?
Yeah, I think I've been conscious of that. I really cannot stand hustle culture, this whole glorification of busy stuff. And look, building a business is not for the faint-hearted. I work incredibly hard. And if I have to work an 18-hour day to get something where I want it, then I will do that, but not um, because of bad clients, or because we're unorganized. It's just sometimes that's what it takes, and I have
Yep.
no problem doing that. But I really, at a certain point, it's diminishing returns, right? We all know it. Giving myself permission, because I get up at 4 a.m. Giving myself permission, it's 3 o'clock and it's kind of winding down, and I'm like, yeah, is there more stuff to do? Yeah, I need to go out for a freaking hike. I need to get out in nature. Can I give myself permission to do that? And I'm not going to lie, sometimes it's hard, but I'm like, I know that I'm going to be refreshed and even better. And if I have to come back and do more work, that's what I do. But just being conscious of where I am mentally, spiritually, physically, very athletic, so I know that I need to move my
Yeah.
body. And so how do I make sure that I'm getting that
Yeah,
in?
that's something that I really kind of wish I could go back in my 20s when I was running the first agency. I just wasn't conscious of, I literally was just like, we got to get it done. And I just kept looking forward to the next decade. I'm like, well, I'll work my ass off now and then I'll be able to celebrate that later on versus, once I
Right.
sold, I was like, or and maybe a couple years before I sold, I started realizing I was like, well, that's actually the wrong. Like I should actually, like when I changed the agency around was really when I actually almost took a job going somewhere else. Like I was going to shut it all down, and we were
Mm,
millions of
wow.
revenue, and pretty profitable at that time. And literally, I just said, how do I build this business around me? And then I was like, who do
Yeah.
I need to put around so the agency doesn't own me, but I own the agency, and
Hmm.
I'm creating an asset rather than, a liability, on my time, on my health, on my, my psyche and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But like, I feel that we all have to be conscious of going, what do we want? And like, how do we, make everyone always talks about the journey, right? Rather than the destination. And
Mhm.
I hate that cliche, but it is really true.
It's so true. It's so true. I think the destination is the thing that you're drawn to, and I believe in trusting what you're drawn to, but it kind of just gets you on a path, and it's what happens along the way. The destination is sort of the icing, but like I'm the cake. I'm that person in going on that journey and overcoming obstacles and challenges and growth and learning and and hopefully having some really joyful moments along that way too. If some Yes, how often do you get to the destination you go, eh, didn't really
I,
didn't
I,
really
I
change
mean,
that
I
much.
got to the destination of selling like a lot of people want to get to. And I was like, I financially we were set, but nothing else changed. Like I bought a $500
Right.
bumper for my Jeep. I like that was the only thing I bought.
Oh, you
I was like,
crazy guy,
oh, I'm
you
really going to
Jason.
splurge. But I mean,
Yeah.
but I was going to buy that bumper anyway. So, but it was just, it doesn't matter. Like you get a certain threshold and it just, you look back and actually after I sold the agents, I always tell the story. I was depressed. I didn't have that contribution, that significance
Yeah.
of building with the team, or doing the cool projects with AT&T or Coke or LegalZoom or any of those. So I was like, and then a couple years go by and I was like, I found this. I was like, oh, I got it back. Like right, like I found
Yeah.
my groove, and then I was like, I'm gonna do this a little bit more different. Like I'm gonna literally design my whole life, and then the business goes around it and kind of spirals outside
Right.
of it. So
Yeah. I have a wonderful therapist, and she gave me this great advice a long time ago, which is whenever you have a goal, don't worry about like the specifics in terms of like if it's a job, let's say what the job is. Think about how does it feel? And you frame it through that lens. So I wake up every day and I'm excited to go to work. I love, that I'm able to creatively express myself. I bring value. I feel
you know,
valued. I love the team I work with. It's that I love my boss. I feel really respected, and I really respect their, guidance or whatever it is, right? And then the details, I'll be very like woo woo here, but let the universe fill that in. But get clear about what you want your life to feel like, and because it could come to you in a way that's not even on your radar.
oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's
you know
like
so
it's amazing. Like when you start figuring out like where do you want to go, and then just you start seeing some signs around. You're like, oh, like that's kind of weird. Like I was thinking that, and
yeah.
then it like subconsciously, I guess it's kind of like you buy this new red car, and then if you've never seen the red car before, but then all you start seeing is that red car all around.
Yes,
So, but,
exactly. No, and I think in terms of being my own boss and having this agency, it's been a really joyful experience. And the next phase is about making myself as hopefully obsolete and unnecessary as possible. So it means starting to build a little team so that if I get hit by the bus, we can sort of operate without
Yeah, I
pain.
always tell everybody is like, you want to figure out kind of the who, like who do you want to be, who do you need to hire, who do you need to become, because your agency will max out at your current level because you got to always keep leveling up. And then,
Hmm.
it's just about, they'll figure out the how. But a lot of times,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of my mastermind members go through this. I'm like, look, you shouldn't be doing sales anymore. Hey, you shouldn't be running these creative meetings anymore. Hey, you shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z anymore, or like marketing. And then they'll be like,
Yeah.
well, I really like that. I'm like, well, cool. Here's the deal. I want you to get to a point where you don't have to do it, but you still can do it if you love doing it.
Right. That's
Right.
right.
Like, it's just because if you want to truly build an asset, you got to have those systems and those people in the place. So you do get hit by a bus, or you have some bad health issues and you're gone for 6 months. Did the business grow, or is it
Yeah.
stagnant, or did it, decline or die? And obviously
Yeah.
we want the one that it's growing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you hit, I know a lot of people had a really bad year this year. A lot of agencies really struggled. It was a particularly difficult year. And we definitely saw a decline, although we're still doing really well and we've sort of turned the ship. But I saw that as an opportunity to say, well, how as an agency owner can I level up? I'm being upgraded. This is actually an opportunity to look at what isn't working and to get ahead of that and to think, right? And it became very clear very quickly with the shifts that needed to be made. And it never would have happened had we not gone, wait a minute, this is kind of, we're not where we wanted to be by August or
Yeah.
whatever it was. So what do we need to do? And so it's look at it as an opportunity. We are all in permanent beta as humans and as agency owners. And um, those, when you hit those walls or you're really struggling to get to that next level, get
Yeah.
introspective, man. Get real and honest. There's so much opportunity
Yeah.
there um, to upgrade.
Awesome. Well, Shannon, thanks so much for sharing your story and your wisdom, for all of us, and all of you listening. I want you to really kind of think about, how can you design your agency around your life, and if you have a business partner, how can you guys design that around each other's lives? Because you have been a part of, one business partner won't pull their weight, and then it's like, all right.
Mhm.
So you want to design it together that works for both of you, or three of you, or five of you, or whoever. And then I also want you guys to think about your pricing, and who are those perfect prospects for you, because I always say there's no such thing as a bad agency client. There's only a bad prospect or a bad process. So make sure you guys do that. That's my hope for all of you. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe, on YouTube or whatever platform that you're on, and make sure you tell us what you guys thought of the episode and the podcast on social media. Reach out to us. I'm the only one that responds. So until next time, have a swank day.